My name is Bob Grand, and I, like so many of you in the room, do whatever Don and Rev tell me. So they asked me to give a 60-second commercial on the Citizen 7 thing. And I said the most important thing I could say, and this is directed at people all ages, but mostly to the young people, is so this is an organization which is a great example of show up and do good. If you do those two things, you can have some success, and this organization will give you a lot of opportunity to do that through networking, through their podcasts, through their individual seminars, through their guest speakers. We had a chance today to hear from a great leader. Those are the kind of things that happen when people get together and when we all unite to do some good things. So that's what this network is all about. For those of you it's your first time, we hope it won't be your last time. You'll believe me, if you get on the list, you'll continue to get invited. I don't know if they've ever purged anybody off their list, but I really do appreciate the opportunity to put a good word in for the humble beginnings that Don and Greg, when they started this thing, and the vision that they'd had, and I wanted to make that comment. So let's give them a round of applause. Well, now for the main event, a couple of things introducing Mitch Daniels. A couple of people called and said, won't that be a great opportunity after 50 years? You probably got some great stories. And I said, well, the problem is if you tell great stories on someone and then you turn the microphone over to them, that backfires on you so well. And then, of course, they said, the resume. And I said, well, I was a young advanced man for Bob Orr. The first time I went out, they had a resume. And his resume, like Mitch's, was about 3 pages long. And I handed it to the county chairman. And at the Lincoln Day dinner, the county chairman read the entire 3 pages. So the governor turned to me and he said, young man, that was a mistake. Give them bullet points from now on. Okay, so anyway, so here's the bullet points. Everybody knows Mitch Daniels' this phenomenal career, serving our country in the White House, serving our major Indiana employer, Eli Lilly, our state, and our great university, Purdue. So there's not much you could talk about because he's got every award, he's done everything that's possible. But so I'll just introduce him by telling you the one thing that I do really love about him is that he's very humble. So people look at me, people that know him, said, really humble. Give me an example. I said, so here's my favorite example. I got a lot, but here's my favorite. Last year, we're playing in a member guest golf tournament. And he puts on his bag, it's got Purdue everywhere. So he puts it on the bag, pull up to the first tee where we're playing. Guy walks over. He goes, hey, so you're a Purdue grad. I'm an IU grad. I said, this would be a fun for us. And Mitch goes, no, I work there. Okay. And I looked for the guy and I said, come on. And I was the president of Purdue University. So then the guy says, well, what university were you at before that? He said, I was a government employee. I said, come on. So the guy comes off the tee. I said, the guy was the governor of the state of Indiana. And he goes, oh, Mitch Daniels. Yeah, I know who he is. So with that, I'll introduce my good friend, Mitch Daniels.
Okay, Mitch. This is it. I duet.
That's right. Definitely duet.
Oh, well, I forgot to introduce Greg.
No, you don't. Okay, Bob, you blew it. Now I just need to learn how to turn this on. Here we go. Okay.
Well, by the way, here we go. I'll corroborate Graham's maxim about careful what you say if somebody else gets the last word. So years ago, I had to have a little, after 50 years of running, I had a little meniscus thing, and I'm going to get it fixed. And the guy who's going to fix it had become a good friend, social friend, from fixing another athletic injury. And so that morning, I had my wife give me a Sharpie. I said, and I on the correct, on the leg, I wrote in giant letters, "This one, dummy," because I'm a funny guy, you see. So I wake up from the anesthetic, and I'm lying under the blanket, and my feet are at the other end. He's painted my toenails pink. So you're right. Somebody else goes last. Watch your lip.
How many of you have followed Mitch's trend with the pink toenails? Hey, it is great to have everyone here. It's great to have our dear friend Mitch spend some time. We don't have a fireplace, but we're going to call this a fireside chat, informal. We did find the Indiana driver's license on the ground. And as you know, Mitch turned our Department of Motor Vehicles around. We don't want that thing lying on the ground, right? So if anyone is missing a driver's license, go see Lori in the back there. How many of you are boiler related, either adjacent or graduates or come from a long line of parents? Let's see how many Boilermakers we have here. Very good representation. How many IU folks are here? Okay. We're friends. We're friends today. You know what Citizen 7 is all about, and that's why Mitch and Bob and all of us are here, is because we are seeking to develop men as friends, authentic friendship, so that we can really revive our city and place and calling and spread the love of Jesus into whatever families, whatever locations, whatever places that we're put in here. And it's just great for new guys to come and meet each other across race and across age. So, Mitch, Bob gave a great introduction. We're going to start, though, sort of where some folks start at the back end. And you know me, I love to read. I need to know from you, besides Harlan Coben, what books are you really enjoying right now?
Well, I read a lot of history. I just finished Atkinson's second of the book about the Revolution. Covers 78 to 81. I'm reading Ray Dalio's book about debt, which only tells you what you already knew, but it's very, authoritative. And starting, for the longest time, I didn't read fiction. You're right. My wife was reading Harlan Coben, who we later got to know pretty well. And so I read all his stuff. Daniel Silva, that man, you guys know, you want to read that guy. Read them in order. And then a friend of mine, used to be a friend, I shouldn't say inflicted. They really are good, but I was completely unaware of the series by this guy, Patrick O'Brien. It's about, you see the movie Master and Commander? Mm-hmm. Okay, that's the first or second book that I had read that. He said, "Oh, you got to read the rest of them." I said, "Well, he gives them to me. There's 22, so I have labored through. I'm in number 9.
Reading is better than TikTok, but you got to listen to Mitch's podcast too. Mitch is with the Liberty Fund. They're outstanding. He interviews tremendous folks who really have practical yet philosophically sound things to say. And I would be remiss, Mitch, if we just don't just express gratitude. And Bob recited some of the litany of who you are and what you've done for us, that you have shaped our lives, and we are very grateful for that. So, yeah. You speak? Go ahead.
That's nice, but I mean, people shape their own lives.
Yeah.
And everybody here has in one way or another. And I'm just very impressed with both, obviously, the size and quality of the people in the room, but the whole fact that you and Don conceived and created this thing. We can talk about that later if you want, but it's exactly what's needed in our world right now. And I'm very cheered up to see.
Well, we will talk about that. I stole some of my Fender for you. Hey, so there are some people that I know that you have either known virtually by reading of them and following their footsteps, or those of personal friendship. I like to start with Calvin Coolidge. Okay, what did his story, his life, and how he governed our country, how did that inform and shape you?
Well, a friend of mine who wrote the Amity Schlaze, who wrote the definitive biography, I'd say, of President Coolidge, called him the great refrainer. And we could use some refrainers in public life and popular culture and elsewhere today. But I would start by saying he was someone who, knew when to stop at the limits of his authority, at the limits of what in public life, what government should do. He was obviously a deeply devout person, and that was one of his defining characteristics, and one worthy of imitation to the extent one can. But, Bob's already talked about humility, but that's an essential virtue. Some people think the essential virtue, and he embodied that as much as anybody's ever held that office. Hard to, even in his time was different, pretty hard to aspire to that office, let alone achieve that office or hold that office and maintain a degree of genuine humility, but Coolidge did.
Beautiful. I encourage you to read Anthony's book. It's a tremendous, powerful exemplar of what leadership looks like. With that, let's get a little closer to home because we're developing friendships here locally. I'd like to mention a couple of friends of yours and just sort of give us what comes to mind as you think about Bill Osterlin.
Yeah, the day after we lost him, I said, it's hard for me to imagine a world without Bill Osterlin. And I assume most of you either knew him or knew of him. Bill came to work at Hudson Institute as an intern, I guess he was, or for a while. This is right before I went to work with you at Lilly. And he got accepted to Harvard Business School. And he always remembered, I guess I remember, but he reminded me frequently that I said, that's just great. I said, you'll go do great things. You'll be a success, but one day come back. The state needs people like you. He did come back, founded Angie's List, and was a remarkably valuable citizen in many, many ways. Angie's List could have been in Carmel, or that's where most people would have put it, somewhere like that. He put it right smack downtown, East Washington Street. As the business grew, he brought back an entire section of the city. He was just that kind of person. We were cheated out of the 30 or 40 years of contributions by Bill, but his example lives on, and I miss him all the time.
I know you do. I know we do. And if you
He's also you can blame him for one thing. He's also the guy more than anyone else who badgered, cajoled, tricked me into running for public office. And the only revenge I could get was to make him say, okay, big boy, we'll do this thing, but you're going to have to run it. And so he had bought this property, as I say, on East Washington Street, old property. He was restoring it one by one, and he had this. Angie's List was in the eastern half of this big old building, firehouse building. And the other half became with the mice and the ceiling that leaked and all the rest, became the campaign headquarters.
Great metaphor for what we're about here. Let's see. One more friend, Harry Donzo.
Harry's, of course, always will be remembered for the fact that he took IU to the only Rose Bowl they got to. He was an instrumental player on that team. Just a good friend for. I didn't meet him until years later, but became a great friend. I asked him to make a sacrifice and leave and come to public life, leave his law practice, which he did for the first couple of years of our administration, and that's some real, I'm sure, financial cost and other professional cost to himself. But that's the kind of citizen Harry is, and fun guy too.
Thanks for that feat of sacrifice. Don made up some T-shirts for Citizen As you get to know us, you'll hopefully get one of these that were against our human nature, choosing the hard way. To love and sacrifice go hand in hand, and it's not an easy thing. And these men and you, Mitch, have demonstrated that. Turning to our lives together, we did work at Lilly together. I was able to see, and Dave Moore and others who are here, some Lilly guys might remember you in your cowboy hat. You sort of broke the mold, that I respected you from afar because Lilly was very dried and staid, and here's Mitch doing something that just blessed me because he was out of uniform at these times. Tell us a little bit about how you approached that.
When I was a kid, my dad, the first job I remember my dad having, he was a traveling pharmaceutical salesman for a small rival company of Lilly's. And he always said, he said, the Lilly people are the cut above. He said, that's the company I wish I could work for. And so I always had that impression, and it was true when I got recruited there. At the time I was asked to join the company, I was very much an anomaly. Lilly has had, and I assume still does, a terrific meritocratic process, but they were very homegrown. And, a lot of time put into identifying talent, moving talent to different jobs and all of that. And so aside from a couple of senior scientists, I was a really unusual character there, coming in at a senior level laterally at the age of whatever I was, 40. And so I was very conscious, and I had this experience in multiple lives when I think about it, of the need to earn my spurs, and reflect my genuine respect for the company and the people in it. Always bear in mind how much I didn't know. On the other hand, I also told myself, look, they've taken an unusual chance on you doing this, and you owe it to the organization as soon as you think you know something to speak up and say so. And that was reflected in some of the early issues we dealt with, like when the Church of Scientology tried to kill Prozac, and with it the entire what became the national campaign to destigmatize mental illness. But the other example is what you touched on. The place needed to be shaken up. Well, I mean, it was so, Tim, right? It was so hierarchical and so formal, and business was changing even then, becoming much more about we need everybody's best ideas, so forth. So we did a few things. The one that it's amazing, 30 years later, people still bring this Tom Bodep. So they give me this very reckless series of improbable changes. A couple people leaving the company. They put me in a job I was not real qualified for, leading this biggest line job of the company, North America. We were 2/3 of the top line, almost 3/4 of the bottom line of the company. So I said, okay, we're going to try to be much more open and much less hierarchical about this. And at the time, voicemail was the medium. And so I started doing a voicemail and putting it out to everybody in the organization, down to the last secretary or person on the production line. And I got fantastic feedback. People were saying, I was once a month, just, here's what's going well, here's what's not going well, and so forth. And people clearly liked being cut in a little more than they had been. So comes Thanksgiving. I don't know where I got this idea, but I decided to make a different one. And I know. I was traveling around because I didn't know much. And I've always found that I've always said a good rule is I take the elevator, not the stairs. Meaning, try to know people from the ground up of the business or the university or the state if you're employed by the people of the state. And so I was out in Denver and having a meeting with just some of the people there, and somebody said, "Well, we love those voicemails." And he's like, "Didn't they ever tell you, you sound like Tom Bodett in those Motel 6 commercials?" So at Thanksgiving, I got this idea, and I got a couple of my friends, musicians, and they did the little guitar lick, you remember this commercial? Maybe they're still on. leave the light on for you. And so I introduced it, said, these folks in Denver said, that sound like Tom, they like these, they sound like Tom Bodette. So, you know, everybody out in Denver, this one's for you. And we start the music. But the deal was that I then, for the next 2 minutes or something, made fun of mistakes that headquarters had made over in the last year. You know, dumb moves we made, or the flavor of the month sort of corporate initiatives and all like that. And it just was like an earthquake that we could make fun of ourselves. And so then I had to do it every Thanksgiving while I was in that job. And it wasn't hard to find things to make fun of, let me put it that way. That's a very long answer, but I just felt, and many of you will have been in this position, culture matters a lot, the culture of an organization. It can be overhyped at times, but it's important. And I was hardly the only person. You know, a lot of the younger people in the company were just yearning for a more open and all hands on deck kind of environment. And Lilly made a lot of changes that direction, and I think became stronger because of it.
Stronger, now #1 market cap in farming.
Yeah.
And let by a Boilermaker. You know, so thank you. You brought a lot of fun to that. We're about fun. We love having fun in what we do. 1998, we started the Oaks Academy. And Andrew Hart was not there yet. But I remember you were chairing our finance committee, and I forget exactly what number was at the bottom of that balance sheet, but it was pennies, if not less than pennies. Do I remember correctly?
Well, it was, I'm sure you do. I mean, it was there were a lot of times we had to snatch the damsel off the tracks, and that you don't have to be a Presbyterian like me to think something providential was going on. We the great minister of my life, Byron Crozier, used to say, a Presbyterian is somebody who falls down a flight of stairs and says, well, I'm glad I got that over with. But, yeah, I mean, it remains, these years later, if I had to identify a single endeavor of any kind I ever got to be involved in that I feel great about, to be the Oaks Academy. And but we started on a wing and a prayer, as they say, and a lot of very, very close calls at the beginning. Can I tell a couple of those stories?
You bet.
One night, the fire broke out. Turned out it was so the Oaks Academy was 23rd and Park, which we didn't know. It was a abandoned or unused School 45, the IPS grade school. And so we didn't know this, but 22nd Street was a gang boundary. And in some initiation or something, one of the young men went in, tried to burn the place down, set fire in the basement, just feet from some oily rags and so forth. How that the fire department said, how that didn't just take the whole building, we don't know. And we said, well, we know. Yeah. But, one other favorite, got a call. I mean, we were looking all the time, who's got, we got carpeting that some business was getting rid of. We'll take it. It was like that. And old furniture, we stretched the place together. But anyway, one day we get a call that there's a guy says, I saw somebody is moved back into School 45. He said, years and years ago, at an auction of some kind, I bought some stained glass windows from that were in that building. And I was always going to have them fixed. I never did. They're in my basement. If you want them, you can have them. So we didn't say no to anything, so we go over and get them. And you laid them out on the floor. Get this. Now, remember, this is a public school building for decades. And one window on either side of the main door. And the stained glass window said, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. So for 70 years or some such. This important piece of scripture, every child who walked into that public school walked in between this piece of scripture. So I got a grant from somebody, and we had them restored and put them back in, and the words of the book are back there now.
They're still to this day.
Yeah.
And I remember it was a wing and a prayer. Mitch would serve me these wonderful berry breakfasts once a month up in his office on the 12th floor, and he said, "Britt, you got to pray," And so I know that God did answer those prayers, even for 2 Presbyterians and beyond.
So Andrew's not here.
Yeah, Andrew's here.
Where are you?
Yeah, Andrew, raise your hand.
Oh, well, there. Okay.
Yeah, what's your Andrew story, real quick?
Well, one day I knew him. He was an up-and-comer at Lilly. What department were you in? You finance? Where were you?
Basement job.
And he says, I've been reading about this school that you started, and I think I'd like to pitch in. I'd like to help out. And we needed a headmaster at the time. And so Andrew is now on whatever it is, 25th year of his two-year sabbatical from Eli Lilly and Company. He's done a fantastic job with your place.
That's right. And, yeah, let's look at that. Andrew was a young man back then. He's still young. Our theme as youth since Mitch is raising up that next generation of what and everything you're talking about. I hope you guys are really paying attention to. I'm paying attention. I'm just 21 years old, as we love to see. But I'd like to move on to a couple of things, and then if we have time, maybe a question or two. But we're very hyper locally and focused here. Like there's a lot of national rancor. Conservatives are fighting conservatives, liberals fight liberals, et cetera, et cetera. We're trying to focus on Indianapolis and our state and spreading the love here. But what have you learned in your experience that would help all of us sort of remain undistracted by those things and keep our eye on what you believe is the real prize over the next few years to really grow what God's blessed us with here in this state and make it flourish and be a sentinel lighthouse to the rest of the nation? Any thoughts there?
Well, I mean, you know the answer. This is the answer. Edmund Burke said, always look to do the duty nearest you. Your family, your next door neighbor, your town, and that's always been true, but never more so, I think, than right now, for 2 reasons. One, and what's so heartening to see an event like this. Surely y'all are reading the same thing or just observing the same things that I do. That particularly over the last maybe 15 years, human interaction is going outside. People spend their time doing this, and it has very deleterious effects. It has effects on people's individual character, individual emotional health, as they have fewer and fewer close friends or friends at all. It has very damaging effects on our things we do collectively. It's clearly a contributing factor to the nastiness, grossness, coarseness, harshness of public life. People who rarely know each other at the personal level have a lot of trouble, collaborating to solve problems as our system of self-government presupposes. So, it takes a little extra effort these days, doesn't it, to interact in the way humans always have. We're the dominant species on this planet because we're social. We were able to evolve and as we did because we could work together. And it takes extra effort of the kind you're making here. It's super, super important. I could give a separate sermon in a moment about the importance of this among men, special importance for various reasons. So that, and so the fact that you come together in this way, extend your network of people you know and have an empathetic relationship with, that's valuable all by itself to you and to the other people. To the extent that you wind up, and you, I'm sure, do and will, doing things together in pairs or groups, or maybe the whole group at some point, that make this a better community, absolutely. And I said there were two reasons. So on top of all those advantages, those of us, and I'm sure it's many of you, who are really troubled by the nature or public square, as we call it today, one answer to that is just light a candle, set a good example. I remember giving a speech. Up in Fort Wayne. This is a few years ago. You could already see where things were headed, the polarization and, as I say, the almost viciousness of public life. And I said, well, we could be an exception in this state. I think to some extent we are. I don't think our politics is nearly as nasty as it has become in most of the country. And so that applies here too. For me, one thing we can control and can do is try to spread this spirit, let's say, of this group more widely, and see if eventually the example doesn't take.
That's beautiful. We have time for one question.
Okay, Mel, go
For the Mr. Governor, Mr. President, you look real fine.
You're a baseball player. I can talk about the Dodgers.
Well, that was my question.
I've been looking for my opener.
Very fond of this far West Coast, left coast team that's overpaid. It's an expensive team, but could you comment on your beloved Dodgers?
Mill, being a sore loser is just not an appealing. I'm shocked that this group would, countenance that. Yeah, well, listen, let me. Yeah, I have been since I was a little kid. They were in Brooklyn when I'm living up in the mountains of East Tennessee. We didn't have any team around. I don't know how it happened. It's a mystery, but I became a Dodger fan from that point on. Named my first dog after Duke Snyder, that kind of thing. And so, yeah, I'm irrational and emotional about them, as many of us are about some teams. And but let's just say this: people are writing ever since one of the great World Series ever, maybe the greatest Game 7 ever. All these sorts of things. It was wildly entertaining. And if you think baseball is an important part of the American character, experience, Ken Burns did that whole series on it. I think this is going to bring baseball back up a little. Yeah, it's been kind of, subordinated to other sports for a while. But, you don't have to be a Dodger fan to be happy about that. So thanks for the setup.
Well, we're gonna close again. Let's express our gratitude for your journey.